5, 4, 3. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the library live stream. Today it will just be me for the start, but then Naomi is coming today. So today we're going to be talking all about organisation and planning for the future semester. So currently it's the 27th of January, the first week for many students on the new semester, and it's a time when you can really get organised and get your head around what's coming. You've had your first semester. You can a few live streams ago we talked about reflecting on the past semester, and now you can think about and properly plan how you can get organised for the next semester. If this is your first semester, then that's fine. You can properly think about how you can organise yourself and get yourself ready, and we'll be giving some tips today. But if there's anything you'd like us to discuss, do let us know in the chat. If you're watching live, if you're watching not live, add it in the comments and we can put it in a future live stream. So yeah, on screen you've got a new animation from Steve, which is about loading a new guest. Just checking that it works. It does look like it's working. If it does do me low, if it starts to annoy you, because I have got an alternate version that I can use. So in today's stream, we're going to be talking about getting organised. As I said before the stream, it's for people who are new to getting organised, but also people who think they're organised. I for one, when I was originally starting my degree at the University of Derby 4 years ago, I was not very organised at all. But I I acted on it, I reflected on it, and I tried to learn over time how to get organised. After getting organised, we're going to talk about planning, future planning, how you can plan for your assignment, how you can plan for your time, and also how you can plan to get extracurricular activities within your time so that you can properly ensure that you do well. And then at the end, I will be showing you some useful apps and tools that we have for getting organised, such as some tools that I use myself, such as Outlook, and other tools as well, if we have time for that. So, before I start today's stream, I thought it'd be worth highlighting something that will be coming out soon. So, in a few weeks on our podcasting platform, which I'm just going to get on screen now, we will be releasing the first few episodes of the series called the Being Successful as a Student, which is basically a podcast series where we analyse each different element of being successful by speaking to successful students and also staff who have experience within the skills to discuss really how you can develop some of the key skills. So on screen I have our podcasting site. We're available on Spotify as well as on all general podcasting platforms. I got the wrong link there. And we have lots of podcast audio available here. I'll put a link in the description afterwards, but you can find us on podcasting platforms like Spotify, for example here. So do check that out as it gets published. Subscribe to the channel because videos for that will get put onto the channel as well. There'll both be a video and an audio version. If you are interested in being interviewed for that, I'm going to put a form into the chat, and you can fill that in. And for some of the episodes, I'll be contacting students to discuss what they think makes a successful student. So do get in touch with that. So, now to get back to the live stream. So, currently on screen, I hope you can see me. And in a second, you'll also be able to see Naomi, who's just appeared.
Hello, I'm here.
Hello, Naomi. Welcome to the stream.
This is the virtual equivalent of rushing into a meeting 5 minutes late with a coffee in hand going, I'm here!
So, we've currently got 17 people watching us live right now, and we are just about to get into getting organised. So I've just introduced the episode and the podcast series, and now we're going to actually get into the proper content. So, Naomi, welcome to the stream. Why do you think being organised is important?
Well, it means you don't turn up 5 minutes late to important appointments such as live streaming on the internet.
Or, if you are 5 minutes late, people know about it so that they can make an animation in place.
That's true.
That is
organisation. I was organised. Yes, I was organised because I told you. And actually, in my defence, I have been in a 1.5 hour training course and I have leapt out of that and leapt onto the live stream. So what was your question? What's the benefit of being organised?
Yes.
I love organisation. I'm the kind of person that I like to be in my ideal world, I'm hyper organized, and I've organized myself and everything around me, and it's all just a beautiful. When I look out, I survey a beautiful world of organization. That's not the reality, though. Either with other people or indeed with myself. Sometimes I don't organize myself in quite the way I'd want to, but it's important because it means that we get stuff done. I think that's what sums it up for me. It's important to be organized because when you're organized, it's easier to get stuff done, and if you're not organized, it's easier to let things slip.
Yes, definitely. I know for a fact that getting organised means that you, especially with a calendar, you know when you've got things on, you know when your assignments are due, you know when to start working on things. It means that when you are working on things, you can work more efficiently. I know for a fact having a folder system on my computer that's fully organised means that I can find my documents really quickly. I don't waste time finding things. It also means you don't lose things. So, for example, I might have lost research in the past. I might have lost work that I've done. That's horrible. It hurts. And it's so nice to be able to find things when you've got them. So being organised.
That moment where you put a lot of work into doing something and you know you've made notes on something and then you can't find it. It's a tough time.
So being organised in that sense both relates to creating a folder system that allows you to find things, but also the naming of files, so that you can find the name of it easily. So, for example, I name all my videos with a date backwards so that I can find them in the correct order.
See, now this kind of organisation is not me at all. When I think about organisation, I'm thinking about organising what I've got to do. I'm thinking about organising, like, say, the people around me. But actually organising things isn't me at all. And I always think this is fascinating because Alex and I, we work in the library. I have worked in the library for many years, and that means that inevitably one is surrounded by a lot of librarians and general library people who like to have everything organised, and they have their books on their shelves at home all organised, and and I think this is you as well, Alex, isn't it? You name things and you label things and you have systems. I don't do that at all. I have books on my bookshelf that are genuinely upside down because that's how I took them out of the box when I unpacked them, and I just put them on the bookshelf. I don't do that at all. I like the excitement of having to look for things.
So yeah,
because you find new things that you didn't know you had.
That's interesting. That's the opposite of me. I like to know exactly what everything that I have, so that I can find things, and can find things quite easily.
In the supermarket, they change things around every so often to deliberately confuse you so that you see more stuff, so that you don't know where you're going. You can't just go straight for what you want. You have to look for it. And now, so with books and things, like I say, I like that. I like that element of, I don't know quite where it is. I'm going to look around for it. And I've not seen that for a while. As we know, I get quite easily distracted. So that is one method that I get distracted. Actually, that is an obvious downside. If I really need what I'm looking for, then my getting distracted by something that's just happened to catch my eye, because I have not organised them properly, then that is a definite downside. So organisation can definitely help keep you focused, I think.
Yes.
You don't get distracted by looking for things or trying to find stuff.
So as we've established there, organisation is quite a broad topic. It ranges from both organising your things, organising your time, organising what you've got to do next. I know one really important thing with me is all about knowing when things are due. And something that we can discuss later potentially that we've discussed quite a lot is about backwards planning, which helps you realise when you need to start work on something. I know that I've got assignments in February, and I just started looking at what I want to do to revise for those. It's exams, not assignments. I wanted to look at what I had to revise for them. I realised I have 800 pages that I need to read for the basic knowledge. And so the earlier you can organise yourself to realise what you've got to do, the more achievable that is. So that's 30 pages a day. But every day that I would have wasted not doing that makes it more.
See, you are very structured. Immediately you've got, this is the number of pages I need to do, and this is the number of days I've got to do it. So that's worked out. Again, I think I'm a bit more flexible.
There's flexibility there.
That kind of thing.
No,
I know, but I wouldn't think about it in that way, I don't think.
Yeah. But even then, for example, if there's a leeway there that I left, so I deliberately left a leeway in that time.
Oh, I know you would have left a leeway.
There's 10 days leeway. So it's 20 pages a day would be what actually I would need, but I've left a 10-day leeway so that things can go wrong. Some days I have to do all the reading, and also so that I don't have to do things. So in terms, so that I've got time to do extra revision on top of that. So what we're talking about here is organisation of actions and assignment work. So, Naomi, have you got any other advice for organisation of like assignments and work like that?
Yes. So when I was studying, I did have, and this we're talking physical folders, I had a physical folder system. So I had lots of lovely, shiny, bright coloured folders. And I would have one, so A4 ring binders, I would have one per module that I was doing. And then I would try and file things as I went along, get lovely dividers, card dividers, and label them all with the different topics in the module. I used to start off really, really well. Every module, it would look beautiful. Like I say, it would be all prepared. I found it difficult to sustain that throughout the entirety of a module, and the organisational system in that manner would fall apart slightly towards the end of the module. But I do think it was good to try, and just keep a handle on, like you were saying, Alex, what's going on in this module? What do I need to do? How long have I got to do it? Do I know when the deadlines are? And for me, that's a real reducer of stress.
Yes.
If I don't know that information, I'm going to be stressed. So I need to find out that information and be really clear about it in my mind, and that will reduce stress, definitely.
It's interesting that you talk about that, because I know for a fact that every week I have to do an amount of reading for my course. I don't know how much that reading is beforehand, so I can only look at the start of the week. And it's very easy for me to not look at how much there is and say, oh, I can do it on the Friday night, the day before, which sometimes I can, but it's not best practice to do that, except for when I'm fully revising like I am now. And it's very easy to not know and live in the bliss and say, it's okay, I'll be able to do it then, I'll find out how much there is then. And then I can look on the Friday night and then realise, oh my word, I have 200 pages to read overnight. And I've been living in the bliss of that I didn't have to do that reading the other days. But actually, if you do take the time to look at how much you've got, you can plan it out, because 200 pages over one night, that is impossible. It's not impossible. It's very difficult to do well, because I forgot most of them if I do that. But if I spread that 200 pages out over the 7 days, that's a lot more manageable. So having a look at what needs to be done and starting early, that can help.
Just when you're talking about living in that little blissful little place where you don't have deadlines and things, I did have a friend when I was studying who she had a deadline. I think it was around Christmas. It was the end of the term at Christmas, and she had an advent calendar, and she would deliberately not eat the chocolates because then the days weren't passing. So she was like, well, I know, look, all my advent calendar doors are still shut and all the chocolates are there, so therefore the time hasn't passed. And the rest of us were like, yeah, but it is passing. You have to make that jump at some point, don't you, into actually acknowledging the time that you have available to you.
So yeah, do have a look at the things that you've got to do early and then try and plan in advance. I think that's the point that we're trying to make overall here, is to have a look early, see what you need to do, and then start doing it. And we've talked about that quite a few times in the past. There's a few videos on our channel about something called understanding the question. Well, that's really when the process starts, is you work out how much you need to do, you get your head around it, and then you start doing it.
Yeah, and that's right at the beginning, like you say, right at the beginning of a module, or at least right at the beginning when you're starting to think about an approach and assessment. Part of that understanding the question is identifying the deadline and identifying what work you're being asked to do and fitting all that together. And if you're putting all that work in at the beginning, then you are making your life much more easier down the line as you go forward.
Something with having the assessment deadline in your calendar can help, especially when you see it. But just that alone might not be that useful, because some assignments take a lot of work. And let's say if it's at the start of a month, you might not see that if you don't keep checking and looking. So something that I would recommend you do to help organise yourself is do a review meeting. Like organise some time into a week where you review how you're getting on with your assessments and potentially change the timescales that you've made. Because when you start, you might identify timescales like, I'll do this much, this is what I'll do. But if you can have a review of those, that can be really useful. So I'm currently working on the podcast series, as I said, and I feel like that's helping me so much to have a review every week at the start of the week. Here's where I am. Here's where I might have been. What do I need to do to my actions? What are my next steps? And then I spend the week doing those steps, review them, and continue on. It might be that I'm in the same position, the best position I want to be. But if you find you're not, what steps can you make to change that? What are your next steps? And with organisation and planning, those two things are very, very useful to identify next steps and to continue onwards.
This is another thing that I absolutely do. I use Outlook, and I use my Outlook calendar, and I am terrible for looking at this week. I'm seeing what's going on this week. That's wonderful. I can see that. And then when I get to Monday morning, I look at my calendar for that week starting on the Monday, and suddenly I'm all surprised about all the things I've got to do first thing Monday morning. It's that feeling of looking at your calendar and go, oh no, I'm supposed to be running a workshop in half an hour, and now I've only got half an hour to think about that beforehand. Of course, all my workshops are beautifully planned in advance.
They are. I can assure you of that. I can tell you that much of a fact.
But I still like to get my, look at them a bit more. And so I am quite strict myself on this, and I do make sure my last working day of a week is a Thursday. Make sure now every Thursday at least I'm looking at the next week to see what's coming up. And you'll be pleased to know I have identified this with workshops in particular. Those are the things that I get most stressed about doing. I make an active choice to look at a separate list. I have these are the workshops I'm involved in, these are the dates they are, and I can make sure that I'm preparing in advance. We've got one coming up, haven't we? Is it next week we're doing Introduction to the Key Skills of Study? Next Monday. See, there we go, next Monday. And I did contact you, Alex, at the beginning of this week, didn't I, to talk about that. So that is that in action. In previous times, I think we've spoken about it maybe the day before, but this is actually genuinely me putting this organisation into practice. I've been consciously a lot more pushing myself to look at what's coming up and to make sure that I'm giving myself lots of time to plan, because that again it's just reduces the stress. It just makes things less stressful and gets you a better quality product at the end.
I think something that you hit on and that you noticed on when you were talking was about, you noticed that with your organisational system, which is to use your calendar and plan actions, you spotted a weakness, which is the fact that on Mondays you might not look early enough and get surprised by what you've got coming your way. And what you've highlighted there is the reflection. So something that I always talk about is think and reflect about how your organisational system works, because you're not going to get organising perfect on your first attempt. It's one of the reasons why university's the way it is. You're not going to get it right first time. But you might make steps that are positive. So do reflect what's gone right, what's gone wrong, and try and think about how you can improve that system. I constantly change mine. I only just discovered the review meetings thing. I love it. I'm doing it all the time with everything I do now. And I only discovered that a few weeks ago. And that's because of having review meetings with work and so on. So, yeah, do think about how your organisational system is working. So we've talked a bit about organising time there. We've talked a bit about organising your assessments. Is there any other elements of organisation that you think we should talk about, Naomi? Anything area that you'd like to highlight?
Talk about organising our minds.
Yeah.
I was being slightly facetious there.
No, it's good.
But I think it's interesting. There's the whole there's that phrase, a cluttered desk is a cluttered mind, and the idea being that you should clean and tidy your workspace to have a clean and tidy mind. And I think it does make a difference in terms of the physical organisation of your space, but also these other organisational things that we've talked about do help you then keep your mind more organised as well, if that makes sense. Certainly for me, if I feel like I've got a handle on everything, I can then think more clearly and I can work out better what I'm doing. So I think for me, if I feel like I've got too many things shooting off in my mind to think about, then it's those other aspects of organisation that will then help sort out what's going on in my head, if that makes sense.
I totally get it, because when you've got so many things going on, you think, well, where do I start? What do I do? What's my next step? And if you've got so many things going on, you might not know. So something I do to help with that is prioritising, but also just to talk to people. So having discussions, putting things into my calendar and say, okay, that's this one. I'm going to think about that on Thursday. I'm going to think about that tomorrow. Today I've got to do this. This is what I will do. This is my next steps. And I can think about those other steps elsewhere. And really, noting those things down might help. Naomi, you had something you wanted to say.
Yeah, I was going to say I find it really helpful to write stuff down, because if I'm trying to hold too many things in my head, again, I'm worrying that I am going to lose them. So to take an example from being in a meeting, our lovely colleague Tim, who I think is probably around somewhere.
He is. He's talking to the students
Tim.
in the chat.
So Tim in meetings will ask us if we have anything in turn, if we have anything to contribute, and sometimes I'm trying to hold 3 or 4 things in my head, and I find that really difficult, particularly when I don't know, because Tim on Teams goes round in a circle. He starts, I think, top left corner on his screen and goes round that way, but I can't see what order we're in on Tim's screen, so I don't know when I'm going to be next. This is a feedback for you, Tim. I find it stressful because I don't know when I'm going to be next. I don't know if I can remember the things that I want to say and so I can get them all out. So just the act of writing them down takes that stress and that pressure off me, because I know then I've got them written down. I'm not going to forget any of them. Tim also knows that I often come to meetings with him with a list. I have a list because that is how I organise my thoughts. That's how I make sure I'm not going to forget anything. Just the act of writing down. And often I don't then have to refer back to it. It's the act of writing them down has helped me feel confident that I'm going to remember them all, if that makes sense.
I agree. There's an app that I actually use for that, which is called Google Keep. You can use any other note-taking app, but write my notes down and ideas down in an app really helps. So that means I won't forget them, and I know at the end of days to review them, and you can archive ones that are old, but managing and sorting that can really help me to remember things. So I'll show it on screen now, the app. I was going to show it later, but there's no need to show it later, to be honest. I've just got it on screen now.
See, this is where I've fallen down when I make notes on my phone. The bit I fall down at is then reviewing them and actually acting them, and then I run the risk of having them just on my phone forever and not actually doing anything with them. So I think, again, if you're going to do that, you need to then make that active push to do that next step, which is review it on the end of the day. Make sure that it's going into a permanent form if your phone isn't your permanent form, or however that works. Or if you do find, so I personally don't make notes on my phone too often, because I know that I will not look at them and I'll forget them. I use sticky notes on my computer, so that's how I make notes of those.
That's a good way of doing it, and you can do that on the university. There's an app called Sticky Note, I think, as well, isn't there? So for me,
yes, that's what I'm talking about. Virtually.
That's what I meant. Sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah. That's what I was trying to think of the name of it, and it's just called Sticky Notes, I think. Yeah,
it is called Sticky Notes. So, I know because I'm looking at it right now.
Naomi, you can't see it on screen at the moment, but on screen I've currently got Google Keep. It's in dark mode at the moment.
Google Keep.
Google Keep is the app that I use. This is the library's account, so there's no notes on here because quite a lot of my notes are personal, so I've not included them on the stream because of that. But
I was just thinking, who knew the library had an account on Google Keep? But that's because the library has a Google account.
It has
so
a
it
YouTube
just comes
account,
through with anything. Yeah, so if you have an account with any kind of Google product, then you will have this.
So it's really easy. You can access it on your phone, you can access it on your computer, and to get to it, literally just type in Google Keep onto the internet. If you've got a Google account, it'll let you in. And you can see the notes that you've got. If you click on the Remind Me, it will send you an email about the note to say, oh, so if you think, okay, I need to think about this when I've got my team meeting, I often ask you to email me with a note, and it pops back up again just before the team meeting starts, which is amazing.
That's amazing.
It is. There's also Collaborator, which means you can work on notes with another person. So if you've got a note and you want to share it with someone else, I do it with my partner all the time when we go shopping, or we've got shopping lists that work like this. So we can plan our Christmas gifts on this app, for example. You can change the colour of it, colour coding.
Nice than me, Alex.
You can add images, and if you're done with it, you can archive it. And it just goes away, and you can see the archive down here with all your old archive ones in case you've accidentally clicked archive. You can also see it on your calendar.
My husband and I do shopping lists on instant messaging, so we just send each other messages, which is great if you're going to the shop like right then, but if you're not, you have to scroll back through the messages to try and find the one that was the shopping list.
So yeah, I think it's a really good app. Like I say, Google Keep. There's lots of other apps out there, but it's one of the ones that I really do like for helping to organise yourself. As a student, I use Google Keep and Google Calendar, but there is Outlook and also Outlook Tasks, but yeah, it's good.
Yeah, there's so much, isn't there? And they're all they'll all be slightly different. Then some will be free, some won't. And we're really not here to give recommendations of any particular one over another. But I think what we would say is it's worth having a look, seeing what's out there, trying different things out, and seeing what works for you. Definitely.
And what works for me might not work for you. It's just experimenting, trying to learn new things, and you'll never know. Another app which people have been recommended is an app called Notion.
Sorry, I've just had a silent conversation with my husband, so I'm going to have to apologise to him after this live stream.
So there's another app called Notion as well that is that people have recommended. I've not learned that one yet myself, but that can also help with organisation. So just getting back to the stream, just to see if there's any questions that we've missed. Do we have any advice for organising research, Naomi? Other than the fact that you did a podcast called Organising Research.
I did a podcast called Organising Research?
Yeah, it was when I was ill last year. You took over for me.
Yes, it was, yes. So by research in this context, we are talking about organising the sources that you found, the reading you've done, things like that. We're not talking about primary research. We're talking about secondary research. If you're doing primary research, that will also need to be highly organised. But that isn't done quite so often in studying generally dissertations and the like. But secondary research happens with all manner of assignments throughout your course, and it's good to be organised with that. So we do have there are tools that you can use to organise things you've read in different sources. There's something we have a subscription through the library to EndNote, and we've got information about that on there's a library guide.
I'll put it in the chat.
I personally did try using a reference. So those are called reference management tools. So they will manage your references. They will hold everything in there. They will. They might help you towards putting together your bibliography and your reference list, all that kind of thing. Personally, I tried starting off with one when I was studying my masters. I didn't get on with it. I can't remember which one it was. I didn't get on with it. I found, for me, the work involved in setting it up didn't justify the benefit I got from it. So the work involved in understanding how it worked and then importing the records in didn't justify the benefit I got from it. I think if you are doing a large piece of work that's going to have a lot of references in it, then that can be really helpful, and it can really help to organise everything. For me, a smaller assignment without hundreds and hundreds of references in it, it was just easier to organise things through my notes. In my own notes personally, and I did develop my own systems then through my note taking to help me organise references in that way. So straight up, the most important thing with that is when you are taking notes on something that you have read, write out your bibliographic information on that piece of paper that you're taking notes in, or on your document or whatever it is. For me, the first thing that I would write down, however I was going to record that, the first thing I would write down would be the full bibliographic information of what I was reading, because then I've got it to refer back to.
Can I just make a note here, Naomi?
There's lots of ways you could do it. You can write it out. You could take a photo of it. But it's important to have that information.
Yeah, if you don't know what that information is, we talk about it in your referencing, in our referencing research, but there's a resource that we have called Cite Them Right, and I've got a video which I explain how to access and use it as well on the channel, which I can link as well. But that's how you find what the bibliographic information is that you need. But definitely, as Naomi said, second you read something, note down where to find it, because that information for the referencing won't just help your lecturer find it later on. It'll also, if you forget about where it is, you can find it for yourself. So yeah, sorry for butting in, Naomi.
No, that's all right. I think that's most of what I've got to say on the topic of organising my references and my reading.
That's good then. So yeah, I agree with that. Take notes and do organise those notes. Something that I'd recommend is having a digital file system. I can show you the file system that I use as an example. So I'll share my screen now. This isn't my studying as a student thing, and it's quite. I do appreciate that it might be quite small, but I can't see the chat, so I can't tell if it is. So I'll make them bigger. So I've got folders. Inside the folders, I then have other folders. So I often make videos, so I'll just go into there. And inside there, for example, I will then have different folders. Make sure there's not too many folders that you have to scroll or look for folders. Make sure you know what they are. Inside those folders, there are other subfolders for the things that you're doing. And it goes on and goes in. So it's just creating subfolders within subfolders works as long as you know where to find things. Because if you start forgetting how the subfolder system works, you can then get lost. But make sure it's clear, reflect on how it works, and
yes. See, again, this is, and I think this really highlights the point that it's about finding what works for you, because that I can't see what Alex is sharing with everybody.
No,
by the way,
can't. I also showed
can picture it in my head, and even the picture in my head is upsetting me and making me feel stressed. I as I've said, that is not the way that I do things at all. And in terms of my files, I just use the search function. And this was a tip that was given to me about emails, actually. So with emails as well, I do not have folders to organize my emails into. I have one folder that's called archive. I put it into my archive folder, and then when I need to find something, I use the search tool and I find it. Because for me, again, it's about cost benefit. The time spent organizing things into files and deciding what that file system is going to look like, and the risk of getting confused, like as you were saying, Alex, the risk of losing track of your original train of thought, and then suddenly you find you've got two folders called meetings, and one's about one kind of meetings, another calls another kind of meetings, or you've got the same documents saved 3 times in 3 different places, because it's got confused. For me, I find it much more easy just to use the search function. But again, it's just different things.
It's different personalities. But I think a big thing for me is when you start being a student and when you start having a bunch of things to read and having to note down, that's when it can get difficult. So if you've not been organised to start with, over time it gets more and more difficult because there's more to do. So I know in my old email that I use, there was 25,000 emails or more than that. I'm not going to go through and make a folder system and sort them through. On my work email, I dedicated myself and said I like having a folder system. The second I made a folder system, and I kept to it. And if anything didn't fit into the folders, I would make a new folder, and I organised it and worked and reflected on it and so on. But if you get yourself into bad habits to start with, it can be more and more difficult to stop and fix. But that's just my opinion. But because you're at the start of a new semester, you've got new modules. You can forget how. If you want to try something new, you can forget how you organised your stuff last semester or in the past, and you can try a new way. And every semester you can do new ways or optimise the way that you've done to improve upon. And then when you then get into the workplace, you'll have an idea of what type of organisation system you like best and what will make you the most efficient you can be, so that you don't end up with an email inbox of 25,000 emails in. And it's not a huge issue to change it. So for me, the cost benefit, there was none of that actual work needed when I made my folder system compared to Naomi, because I just started. So I started last September. I just started working here, so there wasn't that huge amount of effort. It was a small amount. But I can totally understand where you come from with it's a huge amount of effort if you're using an email that's 10 years old.
Yes, although that's not quite what I meant. I
Yes.
agree that, yes, it would be a massive amount of effort if you had hundreds of thousands of emails to sort out. But for me, the effort, even from starting from scratch, would be too much. Yeah. Personally, that would be too much effort to try and think through a file system and maintain that file system. It just, for me, it doesn't bring the benefits that would outweigh the time and effort I put in.
Exactly.
And it's not the way I work. It's not the way I think about things, definitely.
And that's one of the big things with organisation is you don't have, just because someone says this is how to get organised, this is how I do it, you don't have to follow them. The way that I organise myself is how I do it. Naomi is very organised. I am, in my opinion, quite organised now. I'm not as good as I could be, but I'm fairly organised. And we're both organised people, and we're used completely different ways, and that's fine. That's not too much of an issue. So I've got a few questions that I'd like to ask just quickly before we move on to the next part, which is can a student who isn't organised become organised?
I love this question. Are you asking it me?
I'm
Can
asking
I
it for you, but
answer
I
it?
haven't answered it myself, and some people may know this because I was talking about it before you came on stream.
So I would say that these types of skills can be absolutely developed, and they can absolutely be learned. If you make an active choice to develop any skill that you want to develop, then there is potential for you to develop that skill. I was listening to an audiobook, very fascinating book about brain development, that was really saying the idea that that people are naturally good at things, and they are good at those things, and then someone else is not naturally good at that aspect, can't do it, is it's all about just forging those pathways in your brain and working on things and developing different aspects of your skills. So of course someone who isn't organized can become organized, but they have to want to do it.
Totally. I know that, as I discussed at the start of the podcast, I know that I was very, very unorganised, and I know that when I started this job, one of the people who I used to work with, Catherine, said that I was really organised. I was like, no, I'm not, because everyone had always told me I'm not organised, and that's because I had no organisational system. But just take it, if you don't feel like you are organised, take the time to think about ways that you can become organised, listen to some of the suggestions that we have, but also find your own ideas and try new things. And anyone can learn a skill, any skill.
Absolutely. When I was at school, and this is absolutely true, there would be you'd have some lessons where you'd hand, so secondary school, some lessons you'd hand books in, and then the teacher would have them for marking, and other lessons you have the books come back home with you, and then you had to make sure you take them in the next day. And I could never ever remember what books I was supposed to have, what books I wasn't supposed to have, what I was supposed to be doing. And so I would ring my best friend every single morning. Every morning at about the same time, I would pick up the phone, because this was back in the days with the landline, no mobiles here. I'd pick up my landline phone and I would dial her number and I would ring and I would ask her, and she would talk me through. She would organise me and tell me what it was that I needed and what I didn't need for that day. I was also terrible for leaving things places. Absolutely. I would leave coats, I would leave bags, everything. And my mum said to me, every time you stand up and move from somewhere, you have to turn back and check the area that you have just left to make sure you've not left anything. And that was an active thing that I actively chose to do. I really taught myself to do that, and I do now do it instinctively, but it's because I taught myself to do it as a teenager, that every time I stood up, I turned around and I looked to make sure that I'd got everything. So these are definitely skills that you can develop and learn.
Yeah, any skill is. And one of the episodes we're going to be talking about in the Being Successful as a Student podcast, and one of the ones that I'm keen to get out there earlier in the series, is about growth mindset. Because anyone can develop anything if you think that you can try. It's all about having the mindset of trying to develop and wanting to. So yeah. I've just asked in the chat if there's any questions about organisation that people want to have covered. Do ask before we move on to the next section, which is all about planning. I realised that because you weren't here, I completely forgot to use the topic of the week transition again, so I can use that now if you'd like.
Oh no! Use topic of the week transition.
So yeah, the topic of the week this week is definitely planning.
I thought it was organisation.
Well, organisation and planning. I always do this. Whenever I do a stream, I always halfway through decide what the topic of the week is based on when I remember to use the amazing transition that we have. So yeah.
Yes. That doesn't feel organised.
No, it's because I have to remember to do it. And even though I've got it in my plan to say, use the topic of the week transition, I forgot because you literally arrived. And so I was like, Naomi, here's the question.
That's true. Should we talk about our Word document just a little bit? So
no,
we can't go
through
a live stream without
document.
talking about our Word document. But it's one of the ways that we keep organised. For our live streams, we have a document that we all have access to, and that we are all in at the same time. So we're doing collaborative working. We have the one Word document. We share it. We all use it, and that's how we organise ourselves. And then we just ignore it completely when we actually get going.
Yeah, so I've got it on the screen now. What we use, and it includes the different things we're going to ask, but it's generally quite flexible, and so on. So yes, I've now got it off screen again. Cool. So yeah, we're now going to talk about planning. So, planning, Naomi.
Planning. Oh, I see. This is the planning bit. See, I hadn't moved down in the Word document. I'm still on the organisation part of the Word document.
I see.
But I see that the next part of the Word document says planning.
So, Naomi, how can students plan ahead?
I think it's really going to depend on what it is that you're needing to achieve.
Yes.
But identifying what it is that you need to achieve is going to be a really important first step with that. So in order to plan ahead for anything, so this might be planning what you're going to do in the next 5 minutes, it might be planning what you're going to do in the next 3 years, identifying what it is you want or need to achieve in that time is really key. And then planning it again in the way that makes sense to you. So whether that is writing things down physically, whether it's putting things onto a beautiful Excel spreadsheet of time, you can use Gantt charts, can't you? You can do all sorts to plan a project or an assignment or anything like that. But I would say if you're planning something longer than the next half an hour, in that kind of formal planning way, it is a good idea to have some permanent record of it. So don't keep it just in your head. Either write it down or have it your plan logged in some manner.
Yeah. So one thing that I do for planning is, like you say, once you've worked out what the goal is, work out what the steps are. And you were talking about planning things long term. So were you talking about meaning like in a calendar? Or just in terms of if you think you might do something later, remind yourself somewhere, either in a paper form, here are my next steps, or then put into a calendar?
Well, again, it would depend what it was. If I'm planning on... so back when things were open, but not when things were open fully, one had to I was booking into a lot of places. So a lot of the places I go with my girls, I was having to book into ahead of time, which was tricky for me because normally we'd decide what we were doing on the day, but I had to again actively choose to be more organized and plan things ahead because I had to book places to go. So if it's something like that, I would put it into my calendar on my phone so that I've got it there and I can see what's coming up in the week or the month. If I was planning, like say, the next 3 years of my life and what I want to do, I would be writing down action plans, I would be writing down goals, things like that, and I might do it in a much more broad sense of planning. So it might not even have concrete timeframes on it then, but it might be these are the things that I want to do, this is how I'm going to achieve them, and really write that out. But in that terms of that long-term planning, I find it difficult to put timeframes on because I don't know what's going to be happening this year, next year, the year after, so, in terms of all manner of things.
Let's say with an assignment then. So you said about how you want to like make an action plan. So you would write that down then. That's something I would do for sure. You'd write down the actions that you want to take.
Yes, I would. Even if it was just using it as a way to organise my thoughts, I would be writing it down. Yeah.
I always like to know what the steps are and work out what there is to do, and that can always help you because you can then work out some time scales, even if they're rough, and planning things. I know for the series that I'm working on at the moment, one of the first steps that I did is I looked at all the different elements of it. So there's the script writing, there's the interview scheduling, there's the graphics, there's the music, and so on. And I looked at each of the elements and put them in a document and had a look at, and every week I review my progress on them and what I do next, like I said earlier. And the same can apply for assignments. You can look at the assignments such as your information gathering, your writing, and all the different steps you've got and work out when to do them. Someone in the chat just said that they like to set little targets rather so that they can do little tasks at home. And yeah, I think making the item as small as possible can help. If you try and plan something into your calendar that's very broad, you might often think, okay, well, what am I doing? Whereas if it's focused, you might know a bit more about what specifically you want to be doing. So I know that I used to say, I want to write my assignment, but what does that mean? Or I want to research. What part am I researching? So you can split your assignment research down to parts, potentially, based on the different elements you've ascertained when you've got an understanding of the question.
Yeah, I think it's really important to work out in your mind what is the next thing that you need to do.
Yeah.
So it's all very well saying I am going to plan to do part D in a week's time, and then you might even think about part C, the step C before that, and then step B. But actually, it's step A. It's the first step that you need to do to make the rest of it happen, that you need to focus on. And there's no point putting too much effort into planning later steps as a way of distracting myself from the earlier steps. Does that make sense?
Yeah. If you plan...
So I think it is good to have an idea and to plan them in. But for me, I there's a risk that I will distract myself by getting too caught up in making plans for what's going to happen in 3 weeks' time, when actually I need to be doing things now to make that stuff in 3 weeks' time happen.
Exactly. There is sometimes a risk with over planning. I know for a fact that my work, I try and avoid writing my assignment. That's a big issue that I have, is I don't like writing my assignment. But what I do like doing is I like making plans, and then I make a plan of a plan, then I make a summary of the plan. Then when I go to write the assignment, all I've realised I've done is I've turned my plan into and just developed it a bit more and made it a bit more well written. So essentially it's like a draft stage. And I talk about that in the assignment journey as well, but it's definitely over planning can be an issue at times if you then distract yourself from doing things. However, one thing that planning can do is it can sometimes identify what steps you need to do and when, and which priority you need to do them in. So, for example, if you do things in a linear fashion, sometimes it can distract you. And this doesn't always apply for assignments, because generally speaking, things help. But if you concentrate on your research when you do your research, when you get to your references section, might realise that you've not done what Naomi said earlier, which is about writing all the bibliographic details down. So if you know that referencing is coming, think about how you can help that step now. What steps can you take? So, for example, getting the referencing information down now so that you don't have to do it later. So something I'm thinking about on my podcast series is I need the graphics made. But I don't need them done for a few weeks. But if I start them now, it allows them to get done so that it doesn't hold me up. What do you think about that then? So thinking about what the later steps are, so that to see what you can do now to help them, if it is actually helpful to stop them getting delayed.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the analogy that comes to my mind is cooking. So you don't want to start opening your cookbook at give yourself half an hour to plan things for tea, and then look and see that actually you needed to go to the shop and buy something. You'd need to be thinking about it in enough time to work out what you need to go and buy from the shop, for example. Or suddenly you look at something and then you notice when you actually read it in detail that it told you to prepare it the night before and leave it overnight in the fridge. I mean, who's got time for that? But certainly you've not got time for that if you've not noticed that until half an hour before you want to eat. So it is important. And again, particularly, so we talked earlier about understanding the question. When we talk about that, about you looking at your assignment brief and really understanding what is being asked of you. And again, the more you can do that at the beginning of your assignments to make sure you can plan things in, then the fewer unhappy surprises you're going to have further down the line. If you find out that you are being asked to do something that will take time, then it's very useful to know about that at the beginning of the semester rather than at the end.
I totally agree. So, for example, with the cooking analogy again, if you cook and the last step of your roast dinner is to do the vegetables, if you chop them up in advance, you then don't have to worry about them whilst the roast is cooking. But if you go and chop them up just as they don't need to go in, you might not have enough time to finish chopping them. So think about what steps need to be done, how you can make steps progress easier later down the line, because you might be doing 10 things. You might be frying something, you might be microwaving things whilst you're also meant to be chopping these veg. So if you can chop them up earlier, that's not necessarily a bad thing to do. So doing your references earlier, once you've got them, and making it perfect, once you know that you're going to use them, that can be helpful, for example. Thinking about assignments, one thing that I feel like I ought to talk about here is backwards planning, which is something that we've talked about quite a lot, but I want to talk about it very, very briefly, just to identify what it is for anyone new to the concept.
Yes, I had to add in backwards planning onto a workshop that I was doing because it was upsetting Alex that it wasn't there. So carry on, talk about backwards planning. Yeah, so it's something you feel really strongly about, isn't it? Genuinely.
Yeah, it's just so useful because basically what backwards planning is when you look at your objective from the goal, like Naomi said, work out what the goal is, and then go back and work out what steps need to be done, and then when by, because it can help you to really identify when you need to do the work, and when you need to start doing the work, and what steps you need to take. Think about the potential hold-ups that you might get. Think about anything that could slow you down, and work out how long things are going to take, but generously. So I know, for example, with my exam revision that I've got coming up, I want to have read all the relevant textbooks and all the resources at least 2 weeks before. So I will plan in a 2-week gap, and then I might plan in a few more days, and try to focus on getting everything done by then, so then I can focus on revising that knowledge that I've got rather than learning new knowledge just before the exam starts. So that's an example of it. Same goes for writing an assignment. Think about when you want to get it in for. Do you want to get it in for the deadline, or do you want to get it in for a week in advance? In that case, move the deadline to your new deadline. And that way can give you leeway, for example, because things happen in the world. Things distract us, things will come up, and they might get in the way. But if you've planned that in advance, that something might do that, you're good. So backwards planning basically looks at what the goal is, what you want to achieve and by when, and looking at the steps backwards from referencing to proofreading to writing your final draft to the steps that go into that, all the way back to when you're first understanding the question. And it's something that I think is quite useful to explore. I'm not going to go into it with more depth than that now because I've gone into it quite a few times on this live stream series. But if anyone has any questions about it, I'm happy to answer them. There is one last thing I think I want to talk about with planning. Unless, Naomi, you have anything to add. Is there anything that you would like to add first? And then I've got one last thing.
No, it's fine. What's your one last thing?
So planning your time and for your assessment, both in terms of what you're doing, is useful. But something else that I would highly recommend doing whilst you're at university is to backwards plan, not just from your assignments, but also from what you want to be doing in the future. And because whilst you're at university, you've got some time to be investing in extracurricular opportunities and developing your skills. So when you're planning as a student, don't just focus on planning your assignments. Focus on planning how much time you have to take opportunities, because that can really be useful for your skill development. I'm going to go into that in a lot more depth on a podcast episode called Taking Opportunities once it gets made, as part of this Being Successful as a Student series that I'm working on. But do have a look at your time and think about what you can do to increase your skills and experience to help you get the jobs that you want whilst you're a student. And don't just focus on doing well in your assessments, because that is really important. Also focus on how you can make yourself employable for afterwards. That's how I think I got this job, in all honesty, because I would not have been qualified otherwise. I'm just my degree. So have you got anything to add there, Naomi, about that?
Well, no, I fully agree. I didn't do that too much in my undergraduate degree, but
I didn't do it in my first year.
No, when I went back for my master's degree, I did. Again, it's about this active choice. It's active choice to do that. So I volunteered once a week. I really looked at all the things that the university was providing, because there's loads out there that's going on, and what opportunities I was going to take up, and really to just make the most out of the time I had, definitely.
Yeah, if you are interested, the Careers and Employment Service have lots of voluntary opportunities that they advertise. There are also work experience that they advertise as well. But if you can look for your own, thank you, Tim. You can look for your own opportunities as well and try and make some for yourself. But there are opportunities that are available to you, especially now. There's probably even more because they're digital. I don't think I need a raise. But yes, there are lots of opportunities available to you that you can either make yourself or you can develop. There's societies, there's volunteering and so on that you can add to your timetables. Do plan in time into your schedule to do those things, because that will help you. So there's one last thing that I would like to show, which was I was going to showcase a calendar system that helps me to get organised, which is about prioritisation. So Naomi, have you got anything to add before I show that about planning?
No, it's all slightly chaotic here, so I'm just going to mute myself apart from when I need to talk as well. So you carry on for a bit.
Okay, that sounds good with me, Naomi. Sounds good with me. Okay, cool. So, is this week? Yep, it is. So, let me just remove that. So, on screen at the moment is a calendar system that I have started using to help me plan my time, that actually really is useful for organisation. So what I try to do, this is because it's on Wednesday, but generally speaking, I use a calendar system of red, amber and green to try and plan in to my schedule what I want to do. This is a working calendar rather than a student calendar, so there is more to it. But what I will try to do is I will try and focus on making space for green items in my calendar that I can then do. So I will plan my week at the start of every week on a Monday, and I will try and fill it up with greens. And the green items are basically items which are aspirational and I want to do. The first things that I will add to my calendar are any events that are red, which is I have to attend them then. They can't be moved, they are fixed, because they need to be done. However, any items that are red, they are going first. There's obviously not very much at the start of a week. Then I plan in the ambers, so they're items that I need to do. So, for example, writing my assignment, spending time doing reading, spending time planning various things. They're things that I need to do for my goals, but they're quite important. But then I also have things in that are green. So there isn't any green items really here, but if I move back a week, there's more green items because I was less busy last week. So the green items are aspirational things. They're things that I want to do. And if you plan those into your calendar, that can help you to do them, because that can involve time for volunteering and so on, but I would probably put volunteering personally as an amber because that's stuff that I probably should be doing, and even a red if it's at a fixed slot. But do put in aspirational things like skills development, attending workshops, reading various extra things that you don't need to read but will help increase your skills and abilities. And I think that could be helpful. But planning things into your calendar it works for me. It might not work for you, but it's just about experimenting. So that's the Outlook calendar, and it's the calendar that I use for work. But outside of work, I use the Google Calendar, which is to organise what I do outside of my working hours, which can really be useful as well, which I've got on screen. One of the useful things with the Google Calendar is that when you're planning to work with other people, it can be useful because you can actually have shared calendars. So I've got this calendar here, which is shared with everyone in my organisation that I'm involved with. There are personal calendars, which plan what I'm doing, and there is calendars I can share with individuals as well. And you can often just turn off and on calendars quite easily to see what you're doing. So, yeah, Naomi.
I was going to say, just in terms of using calendars, and I've said this a lot in this live stream, and I don't think I'd realised myself how much I actually do this in terms of stress management. I'm quite prone to stress and anxiety and that kind of thing, so I know I need to manage that. But when we were in the summer, I knew that my daughter was going to start school. She started school in September, and that was a huge change for us in terms of routines and what we had to do every morning and all these things. And I was having stress dreams. I was having dreams where I woke up and I'd forgotten to get her there. So I was having dreams where suddenly I realised that it was 2:00 in the afternoon and she ought to be at school, and I'd forgotten to get her to school. So I bought a wall calendar, a white clean whiteboard style wall calendar that I stuck up right next to my front door. It's a month view, and I wrote in diligently all the things that we had to do for September to get her to school, and I found that so useful. So that's not the kind of thing I would do on a regular basis, but when there's something big that I know is coming up, then and the calendar is now still on my wall, just wiped clean. I've got nothing on it now because I'm not stressing like that about anything big. But for when I know I've got something, a big change like that coming up, really having a really visible reminder. And for me, that does mean physical. I don't look at my phone calendars in that kind of way. I don't use these electronic devices in that kind of way. For me, it needed to be something physical on my wall. This is what we are doing. These are the days that she's doing half days. These are the days that we're doing full days. This is what I've got booked off work. It was all on that calendar, and that really helped me manage that period of time where we were making that transition. So for me, if there's a time of change particularly, that's when I'm going to get much more organised in those ways.
Yes, I agree. Having things available to help you do help. I was just replying to chats there, so I wasn't focusing as much as I should have done, so I do apologise for that.
It's all right. It was all good stuff.
Good. I'm glad. I think I'd like to start wrapping things up now, but do just note that planning and organisation are definitely things that you don't get them straight away. You can't just attend or watch a live stream like this and learn them, but it's something to work on over time, and you can do it. Even though it's an unorganised person like who I used to be can become organised, and it is possible. So do try your best to learn, do try to engage and try to learn new ways of doing it, and only you can teach yourself that over time by trying and practicing some new techniques, reflecting on them, and then improving to go forwards. But hopefully we've given you today some new ideas, some new ways that you can use, and some ideas.
Between us, Alex, particularly in this topic, we're a brilliant example of the fact that people do work differently. We approach this very differently. I think we've established some ways similar, but a lot of ways very differently. But we both have found what works for us, and we both would class ourselves as organised people. So I really would like to make that point. There's no one good way of doing these things. The good way of doing it is the way that works for you. And what we've both done is put time into working out what works for us personally.
I agree. So if you have enjoyed today's live stream, please do subscribe to the channel. We do live streams every single Wednesday, although we are going to be changing the time in the future, and those will be changed on the events calendar that we have. We also run lots of workshops.
But if you subscribe, then you'll get notifications when we're going to be doing them. So you don't need to be organised in that way, because your phone will ping up and say, look.
And if you do miss them, they're available as videos on demand as well. So you can still watch them that way. So we are doing lots of events. I'm sure you probably found us through this calendar, but the times will be in there. So same with the other events that we're doing. Do let us know in the chat if you think there's any other topics or workshops you wanted to do or anything for the live streams, because the live streams are entirely made off your demand. So if there is anything that you'd like us to cover in the future, do let us know and we can cover it in a stream. Otherwise, if you are subscribed, we do have the new podcast series ready. We're publishing YouTube videos every Monday currently, and I've got some ready for the upcoming semester based on our workshops, but also making new podcasts about being successful as a student. Anything else that I should plug before I stop talking? The skills guides, maybe?
No, we've got loads of stuff. Look at it. It's all great. And if you can't find a thing, then get in touch with the library.
Yes, you can email the library. We've got skills guides as well that I can link for academic writing and so on. And yeah, the final thing I was showing off was the assignment journey series, which is here, which is in 8 parts. Is it 8 or 9 parts? I think it's 9 parts. From the first steps of getting an assignment, structuring and planning, researching, organising research, assignment writing, referencing, and then reflecting on your assignment. So there's a series there that you can watch to help you with academic writing and assignments if you are interested. I think that is all that I have today to say. But yeah, I'm glad that you have enjoyed it. Thank you very much for chatting and commenting throughout. I've really enjoyed this live stream. Have you got anything to add before we head off, Naomi?
No, just lovely to see everybody. And we are here. We are doing this. So do join us again.
So yes, today's live stream was brought to you by the University of Derby Library Skills team. Thank you, Tim Zelstra, for your help with the script and also for managing the chat today. Naomi, thank you for being the host alongside me. Thank you for Stephen for making all the graphics that we had today, including these end credits. And I will be adding some useful resources to the video link that will come out after this. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye, Naomi. I'm just waving now. You can't see me.
I'll wave. I can do waving.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.